Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or hello if you are new here. So let's just jump right into today's video topic. As you can tell from the title, it's basically just a giant list that I made of things you should stop doing in the gym because they're probably either hindering or regressing your progress. And I'm speaking from personal and professional, more importantly, experience. If you guys didn't already know, I'm a certified personal trainer. I've been a personal trainer for 3 years. I started training in college where I got my biology degree, and I'm currently applying to a doctorate program for physical therapy. So all things biomechanics, all things related to the body and muscle growth and moving as efficiently and strongly as possible are my jam. But I feel like TikTok and Instagram have been promoting a lot of like fitness trends, especially TikTok. And a lot of people don't know what they're talking about, and it can actually be harmful. So we're gonna cover all the bases today, from supplements to workout equipment to exercises themselves. We're gonna go over all the things you should stop doing that you might be doing and you don't even realize you're doing. But that was a mouthful. Before we get into the rest of the video though, please don't forget to give it a big thumbs up as well as a comment down below. And then of course subscribe if you haven't already and join the little fam, and then hit that post notification bell. That way you don't miss out on any future uploads. But yeah, let's get into this video. So I kind of like to do this style of video in the sequence of what a workout would be. So I'm gonna start with glute activation, because this is a hot topic that I get a lot of messages and DMs about, in-person questions about. I see a lot of people promoting, a lot of people talking about it. You know, this is the key to grow your glutes. If you don't feel your glutes, this is what you need to be doing. Don't skip glute activation. And I think it's a waste of time. I know, I'm gonna get canceled for this video in the fitness community, in the Instagram fitness community, but hear me out. Glute activation came about, I think, when a lot of people started saying, I can't feel my glutes when I do my workouts, or I'm not getting a good burn, I'm not getting a good pump, my glutes are inactive, which is a very common term in the physical therapy, sports medicine world, inactive glutes. And I think a lot of people took that and thought, well, I need to get blood flow to my glutes and a really good glute pump before the actual workout. So I see a ton of people promoting glute activation with bands, which we'll cover later on. And they're doing like 3 sets of 15 of 3 different exercises before their actual lifts, which is a waste of time, but more importantly, a waste of energy. What a lot of people mean by inactive glutes is weak glutes. If your glutes were truly inactive, you wouldn't be able to walk because you wouldn't be able to perform hip extension, abduction, internal and external rotation. Your glutes are always working, but inactivity is weakness in the glutes. And I stopped doing glute activation a few years ago, and I've seen tremendous growth. When you are trying to activate your glutes, you should be doing so the first couple sets of your compound movements. So if you're gonna go into hip thrusts with the plate, if that's where you're at, then add on to 25, then go to 2 plates. Start warming up your glutes before you go into your working sets and activate them that way. I think a lot of the other reason why people say that they don't feel their glutes during their glute workouts or during their workouts in general has to do with exercise selection, and the exercises that they're selecting are actually not glute biased, and the glutes might be the secondary or tertiary muscle group working in that movement. So I think a lot of it has to do with improper mind to muscle connection during the first few sets of your workout routine and exercise selection. So glute activation, in my opinion, in my experience, is a waste of time, and you don't need to be warming up for 20 minutes prior to your compound movements, and I would actually advise against it. So I just mentioned bands in my glute activation segment, so I'm gonna talk about bands right now and why I think they are, again, a waste of money. I'm not talking about the long bands that you might use for like assisted pull-ups or, you know, specific types of warm-ups and band work and things like that. I'm talking about the loop bands that everybody and their mother sells. These can be very helpful in certain situations. They're used a lot in physical therapy, they're used a lot in sports medicine, but using them while doing compound lifts, like if you're going to use a loop band for your hip thrusts, for your deadlifts, for your squats, for your kickbacks, I highly advise against it. And I don't want to go too deep into the actual technical biomechanics of this, but I do think it's important to let you guys know and to give you guys information. So I'm going to go a little bit into it. Your muscles' only purpose are to move bones to and from each other to flex them and to extend them and all that good stuff. Your muscles have fibers that run in certain directions. And when picking different exercises, you want to pick exercises that their force, whether it's vertical or horizontal, lines up with the muscle fibers. So to give you a better example, if I'm going to do a bicep curl, it's a perfect exercise to work the biceps because the load, the force of the load is vertical, and so are my bicep muscle fibers. So this movement is perfect. Same thing applies for every other muscle group, and the glutes are an interesting one because if we're talking primarily about the glute maximus, or the biggest muscle, the one that's most prominent in terms of aesthetics and power and utilization, I guess, their fibers run, and I'll always put a graphic over here, but their fibers run and kind of wrap around the body. And then underneath the glutes, you have your glute minimus, medius, you have your piriformis, you have your TFL, you have your psoas muscle, you have all these muscles running underneath the glutes, and all their fibers run in different directions. So there's a lot of different exercises that you can do in terms of the glutes and that lower region of the body, but not all of them are the most effective, if that makes sense. What I'm trying to say is the glute max's main primary function is hip extension. So think the top of a deadlift, think the top of a squat, think a hip thrust. When you're coming up from a lunge, when you're doing a specific kind of kickback, that's the glute max's primary function. If you're doing a hip thrust, a deadlift, a squat, and you put a band around your knees, you are now promoting abduction and external rotation, both of which involve all the other muscles except for the glute max, and they're going to work in conflict, antagonistically with the glute max, and they're going to take away from its function. So if you're putting a band around your knees while you're doing hip thrusts, you might say, oh, well, I feel a burn, I feel a pump. It's not your glutes, actually. It's all the muscles working beneath your glutes that are giving you that sensation of the glutes are working, but they actually don't work together. So abduction and external rotation do not work well with hip extension. So that's why I always tell people, do not use a band when you're deadlifting, when you're hip thrusting, when you're squatting, because you're going to take away all that work that's trying to be done by the glutes. So that was a very long-winded reason and explanation for why I do not promote banded anything. Okay, so speaking of loop bands, I want to talk a little bit more about other exercise equipment. Waist trainers, no. I get a lot of heat for this on TikTok when I say that I'm anti-waist trainer, but it's just science. It's going to limit your mobility and ability to utilize your core. A lot of people say, well, it helps with my back strength and it helps with my core. It doesn't. It actually makes you codependent on that object in order to get back strength, and you're limiting your core's ability to get stronger, to support your back without the waist trainer the more that you wear it. Not to mention, it's literally just going to limit your range of motion, and there's really no point to it because it doesn't, you can't spot reduce fat. If you want to wear one, by all means wear one, but I don't think you should be promoting it to the public because it's a waste of money. That's all I'm going to say. Going in line with that, we're going to talk about BFR bands, or blood flow restriction bands, also known as occlusion training bands. These bands always fascinated me, and when I was volunteering at a physical therapy office, I wanted to ask the doctors because I was just so fascinated with all the girls that I've been seeing and was seeing with these tight bands wrapped right underneath their glutes. And here's the tea. I'm going to spill it right now. They don't work for the glutes. They work, but they don't work for the glutes. So BFR bands are used commonly in rehabilitation settings because they work, but they work for a specific reason. So when you tie a blood flow restriction band, it does exactly that. It restricts blood flow to the distal limb. So to the limb below where you tie the band. So if you tie it below your glutes, it's gonna work more your quads, your hamstrings, calves, all the way down the leg. And what it does is it restricts the blood flow, thus restricting the oxygen level. That way you can use maybe a damaged muscle and put it under more stress without having to add external load, if that makes sense. So make it work hard, but not adding a bunch of weight or resistance in order to do so. So that's why it's used commonly in rehabilitation settings, post-surgery, things like that. When I see it being promoted for glute work, it makes me laugh, and then it makes me really concerned. One, because these people using them, I don't even know why they're for sale, quite frankly, don't know how tight they need to tie these bands, don't know how frequently they should be using these bands. And there have been stories of a lot of women specifically having broken capillaries and popped blood vessels in their legs because they use them too frequently, tied them too tightly, restricted too much blood flow, restricted too much oxygen, and now it caused damage. All to say, there's no point in using them. So just another thing I wouldn't recommend wasting your money on or buying into, because similar to waist trainers, it's just pointless and it could be potentially dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. So now I want to move on to exercise selection, or my favorite, I guess, topic, because it's all the exercises in the world. And I'm going to talk primarily about lower body. I know, shocker, but I feel like my progression with that has been so up and down, and then my upper body progression has been pretty linear. But the same thing that I'm going to talk about applies for upper body as well. And that goes back to all the points we just covered up until this point about exercise selection, muscle fibers, and specifically, well, I don't feel my glutes during my workout, that's where I need to do activation, or I really feel my glutes during this exercise, or I really feel my glutes during this exercise, so it must be working. We're gonna cover all that right now. If you're someone whose glute routine looks something like this, so you start out with sumo deadlifts, then you go to maybe, you know, a wide stance leg press, and then you do the abduction machine, and then you do cable kickbacks, and then cable abductions, and then you maybe do a bunch of sumo squats. All of those are phenomenal exercises. I do some of those exercises. They're great exercises, but they're not the best for your glutes. If anything, the glutes might honestly be the secondary or even tertiary muscle group working in that exercise. So then that takes me back to the point of either I don't feel my glutes at all, so I need to do a bunch of activation before the exercise, which we already covered is not really needed, or I really feel my glutes burning during this, it must be working. But then when we covered in the second point is a lot of the times it's the muscles underneath the glutes that are working during a wider stance sumo deadlift or abduction machine or cable kickback, things like that. So the reason I bring this up, like I said, none of those are bad exercises. I encourage you to do them. However, don't put all your glute growth and lower body development faith in those exercises when there are so many other, maybe less cute, but more effective exercises you can use. Because the worst thing that you can do, and what I did for years, is spending all this time doing all these cute exercises that I saw on Instagram, doing 8, 9, 10 exercises in a session. Maybe 1 to 2 of those were great for the glutes or any muscle group that I was working. The other 6 I could have done without, and I was just wasted a bunch of time and I overexerted myself. So if you're doing a lot of sumo deadlifts for the glutes because they look great on TikTok and everybody's saying, oh, it's a great glute exercises, I urge you to switch to something more like an RDL or a conventional deadlift, because like we talked about with the muscle fibers, those exercises, that more narrow stance lines up perfectly with the glute max muscle fibers. And it's a hip extension motion, making it the most efficient way to utilize the glutes and of course load the glutes and build upon them. With the abduction machine, it's a sneaking machine because it does burn in that glute region, but that exercise lines up more, that seated position lines up better with your piriformis than your actual glute med. So then look at your kickback. You want to do more of a glute med kickback as opposed to like the swinging the leg to the side. So all this jibber jabber that I'm telling you is all the research that I've done. And again, if you watch some of my older videos, specifically the last one about my exercises, my week of workouts, I cover all my favorite glute bias and lower body bias exercises. All those exercises were carefully selected for the specific purpose of targeting the glutes or whatever muscle group I was working the most efficiently. All right, guys, that was the end of the video. I hope you found it helpful and informative. I know it was a little bit long-winded and we touched on a lot of things, but this is a video I've been wanting to make for a while, and I can always go more in depth about any topic. If you want me to, just feel free to let me know in the comments down below, or you can DM me on Instagram. But there's so much BS on the internet. I just wanted to make a video with more information, just so anybody who's, you know, looking into things has a different opinion maybe. But if you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to give it a massive thumbs up, as well as a comment down below. Introduce yourself if you're new, and then of course hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It just really helps my channel out. But yeah, I'm gonna go to bed now because it's late. I hope you guys have an awesome day, an amazing week, an amazing workout if you haven't had one already. And I will catch you guys in my next video. So bye guys.